DawnCheré, John chapter 21. We're going to do this together tonight,
Yes.
Which is always fun. And why don't you read the first 6 verses to kind of set the stage, and then we're going to jump in this together.
Great. Starting at verse 1, it reads, "Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And as we kick off this collection, Make or Break, we're gonna take tonight, the next few minutes, to talk on this thought, the other side. Will you bow your heads and pray with me? Lord, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for every person in this room. Thank you for what you're doing in our community. You're doing what we could never do on our own. This is your story. So God, I pray that as we look to your word, that you'd open up our hearts. Lord, Holy Spirit, that you would speak to us tonight. We want you. We're here for you. We love you. And everybody said, Amen.
Come on, everybody said. Amen. Come on, 7:15, turn up, make some noise if you love Jesus tonight. Tonight, we're kicking off a collection of talks, and I love the title of this collection of talks, Make or Break, Why Some Relationships Last and Others Don't. And I don't know if you've ever found yourself in that spot before where you can have, on one hand, some relationships that seem to be working so well, but on the other hand, you feel like your relationships are toxic or falling apart on a constant basis. Tonight, whoever you are, wherever you come from, whether you're married, divorced, single, it's complicated, whatever your relationship status is, the truth is that we all have some level of relationship. And every relationship has dynamics. And we have to put ourselves in a position to learn and to grow. We actually believe that Jesus said, love God, but he also said, love your neighbor as yourself. That he doesn't just want to get us to heaven, but he wants us to thrive here on earth relationally. DawnCheré and I, we moved into this house about 1.5 years ago. And when we were signing the lease for this new rental home that we were moving into, the landlord, he said, how do you guys feel about us putting in a swimming pool? I was like, let me pray about it. I was like, absolutely, yes. What else can you give me, you know? And so it took 1.5 years, but about 2 months ago, maybe 8 weeks ago, the landlord came back and said, okay, we're ready actually now to put the pool in. And so I came home 7 weeks ago, and when I got to the house, like there is a construction zone in the backyard. There's tractors, and they've dug out this hole in my backyard. And when I walked up to the scene, I was a little confused because where they had placed the hole, well, it's not where I would place the hole. And I said, is this it? Like, is this it? And the construction worker, he looked kind of, he's like, yeah, this is the hole for your new swimming pool. I was like, what are the dimensions of this hole? He goes, it's 12 feet by 18 feet, 5 feet deep. I said, that's not a swimming pool. That's a glorified wishing well. I go, bro, this cannot be right. 12 feet by 18 feet, 5 feet deep. Like this is a trap for somebody to drown. I don't understand the size of this. And why did you put it all the way on one side of my backyard? This can't be right. They said, sir, this is the plans. This is what we got, the blueprints. This is how it's going to be. I said, this is not how it's going to be. You can't put a 12 foot by 18 foot, 5 foot deep hole in my backyard. Well, he wouldn't shift for me. So I did what any good husband did. I walked in and I complained to my wife. I said, DawnCheré, did you see this hole in our backyard? And I started to complain to her in just classic, perfect DawnCheré. She said, Rich, why are you complaining? She said, why don't you be grateful? She goes, you don't own this house. You don't own that backyard. You're not paying for that swimming pool. She goes, what's wrong with you? Then she has the audacity. She goes, I like it. I said, this is not up for debate. It's 12 feet by 18 feet, 5 feet deep in the wrong place. She said, you should be grateful. I said, I'm sorry, I have a spirit of excellence. I said, call the landlord and tell him to change this pool around. She said, I'm not calling this guy. That's crazy. I'm not gonna tell the guy he built his pool wrong. I go, you should call him. She said, I'm not gonna call him. I said, you should call him. She disobeyed, she never called him. This week, after they now have laid concrete in this hole, after they have now shaped it and put pipes into this hole, the landlord came to our house for the first time. And he sent DawnCheré a text. He said, Mrs. Wilkerson, I want to apologize for the inconvenience. Somehow, the pool company has placed your pool in the wrong spot. Not only that, the pool's dimensions are half the size that it's supposed to be. It is now going to extend the project 6 more weeks. Please, please forgive us for any extra inconvenience. DawnCheré screenshots this text, sends it to me and says, sounds like you were right. I'm sorry, after 2 months of debating, you can't screenshot and say, looks like you were right.
I mean, I get to tell my side, right?
I guess.
Because there is the other side. Our landlord has been so kind to us. And so for me, I'm thinking, I don't have the blueprint. Maybe he's putting the pool over here because we're gonna have like an amazing deck. You know what I mean? Like maybe I don't know, maybe he's gonna do something amazing in the backyard. So I was just putting my faith and trust in him. Didn't wanna question it, but let me tell you, after I sent that screenshot and after Rich got home from the gym, it was a very quiet morning in our home.
Followed by passionate discussion. It made us think for both of us because in relationships, there's always 2 sides to every story. And moments are gonna come in your relational life where the pool gets placed in the wrong spot. But if you'll learn how to, at times, respond correctly, you can get around with pools being placed on the wrong side. But you can never allow yourself to get to a spot that your relationship is on the wrong side. So often what takes place in our relationship life is that we forget that there's 2 sides going on. We forget that there's 2 perspectives happening. And if you're ever gonna walk in health relationally, it's gonna require you to learn the other side. Our challenge that's before us is that we don't really always value the other side. In fact, most of the time, we're really good at only explaining our side. Yet for many of us, if your relationship was a book, you're only halfway through that book. You need to keep on reading to discover what you're missing. I know that we're good telling our side of the story because anytime you get into an argument with your spouse, with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, watch how you recount the story to a counselor or to a friend. What you do is you always characterize them like they're crazy, and you always make yourself look really awesome. Whenever I'm talking to one of our counselors about DawnCheré, I'm like, yo, I promise she looked like she was gonna physically hurt me. I was scared for a moment, but then I responded like Jesus, and I say, yo, girl, ye who have not sinned, cast the first stone. Because how many of you know that we tend to judge people on how we perceive them, but we tend to judge ourselves based upon our intentions. And tonight, it's a really, really simple talk that if your relationships are going to last, any type of relationship that you're going through, you're gonna have to learn how to get to the other side, learn the other side. If you play golf, the whole point of golf is to get this little ball into this little hole. But when you finally make it onto the green, there comes an important part as you're putting to put that ball into the hole. Any good golfer knows that as they read the green, they're trying to discover where the green is gonna break so that they can putt the ball properly. But a good golfer doesn't just read the green from one angle. A good golfer marks his ball and then walks to the other side of the hole. And from the other side of the hole, he or she catches a different viewpoint. And now when they see it from this side, they can see where the ball is going to break. I wonder what would happen in our relationships if we would get to the other side. Maybe we could prevent our relationships breaking in the wrong spot because we got a new vantage point, because we got to the other side. Come on, somebody. We're gonna help somebody get some freedom tonight in their relationships. Yet, DawnCheré, when we talk about the other side, the question is always like really simple. How do we learn the other side?
Exactly, how? Like, what are the handles? Because there's not one person in this room that doesn't want a whole relationship, that doesn't want healthy friendships, that doesn't want peace in your home. We all want it, right? But the question is, how do we get to the other side? In this house, things always start and end with Jesus. And I don't know where you're at on your journey with Jesus, but I just want to be upfront that for all of us in this room that have a personal relationship with him, he's changed everything about our life. The thing that's powerful about the life of Jesus is that he gave his life 2,000 years ago so that our vertical relationship could be healed, our relationship with God. We now have access to the throne room of God. We now get to walk with God, have the Spirit of God dwell within us. But God came not just so that your vertical relationship could be healed, but he came to heal all of your horizontal relationships too. Isn't that good news that he came to heal all the relationships in your life and that your relationship with Jesus impacts every area of your life? And so we're gonna look to the text and we're gonna place it in context. John chapter 21, it's a conversation between Jesus and some of the disciples. Jesus had lived on the earth 33 years. For 30 years, he was growing into the man that God had called him to be. And at 30 years old, he stepped into full-time ministry. And everywhere he went, crowds would follow, the Bible tells us, because miracles were taking place. The blind were regaining their sight. The lame were learning to walk again. The dead were coming back to life. Truly miracles that the world had never seen. Naturally, a crowd is gonna follow. Miracles are taking place, I want to be there. But it wasn't just the crowd that was around Jesus. Jesus selected a few men to walk beside him in relationship, in friendship, camaraderie. He allowed these men to be on the journey to know him, to be his closest friends. And those men were known as the disciples. And those 12 men for 3 years got to travel with Jesus, to know his heart for people, to know his heart for the Father, and to hear the mission from his very lips of why he had been sent to the earth. But John chapter 21, it's after the resurrection. Yeah. So this story that we just read was after Jesus was crucified, put in the tomb for 3 days. He resurrected, but so much has transpired in the relationship between Jesus and his disciples in such a short period of time. You see, when Jesus was taken in the garden, and then when he was taken to his death at the cross, the Bible tells us that his very closest friends, the disciples, the ones who loved him, the ones who had stood beside him, every single one of them scattered. I just want you to think about that for a moment. Every single person that Jesus had counted on, every person that he had poured his life into, had close, intimate conversations, had loved, had encouraged, had built up, had called them from a place of isolation into a community, a place to belong, that when he needed them the most, every single one of them turned their backs on him and they ran. And not only did they run, but the Bible tells us that Peter, who was one of his closest friends, Peter denies him 3 times. Acts like he doesn't even know him, doesn't want to be associated with him, runs in fear for his own life instead of standing up for Jesus. This is what has transpired since the cross and this conversation that takes place between the disciples in the boat and Jesus on the shore. Somehow, Peter has found himself back on a fishing boat, the same place that Jesus found him 3 years prior when he called him from the fishing boat and said, "You're gonna now fish for men." Peter's full of guilt. Peter's full of shame. because he left Jesus when he needed him the most. And now Peter is back fishing. Let me ask you, what is Peter doing fishing again? What's he doing back on a boat? He's supposed to be on mission. He has a message in his heart. Why has he gone back to who he was before he met Jesus? You see, disappointment leads us to default. And default is what we once knew, what we're comfortable with. Oftentimes when we don't know what to do, we go back to what we used to do instead of waiting and trusting God to show us what we should do. How many of you know there's nothing behind you any longer, that you can strain towards what is ahead? You can put your trust in Jesus. You can put your faith in God, and you can know even when you don't see it that there is more. If you believe it tonight, give God a shout in this house. There's more for me. Oh, I'm not going back. I may be disappointed in others. I may feel like I've been stabbed in the back. I may have disappointed myself, but God's not done with me. So I'm not going back to the isolation. I'm not going back to the gossip. I'm not going back to the old friends. I'm not going back to my old ways, to my old hunger, to my old dreams. I've got a vision in front of me, and it says, who the Son sets free is free indeed. I'm not going back. I'm done with that old life. What was Peter doing fishing? He had seen the blind regain their sight. He had seen people healed in an instant. He had seen the deaf hear again. He had watched the dead brought back to life. What was he doing back on the boat? How often do we go back because of disappointments in life? Because she offended me, because he offended me, because I disappointed myself. I might as well go back to who I was. You don't have time for that. Your destiny is too great. The future is too bright. Peter is there fishing, but Jesus comes and he finds him right where he is. You see, as we look at this text, we can find truth. We can find truth in the text for our own individual situations, for where we stand in our relationship tonight.
Such an interesting concept that Peter is back on these fishing boats, because you'll find this happen so often in relationships, that when struggles come or when hiccups happen or when challenges happen to us, many people go back to old habits. Two wrongs never make a right. It was Peter who made the mistake. It was Peter who hurt Jesus, yet now he feels the guilt and the shame. And so the way that he copes with the guilt and the shame is to go back to what comforts him temporarily. And tonight, as we look at this text, we're trying to figure out, how do we get to the other side? How do we learn the other side? How do I see it from DawnCheré's perspective? And the first thing that we'll discover as we watch Jesus and how he initiates and how he goes after people is, the first principle that we discover is that we have to learn this principle. We have to fight for us. Fight for us. This is so important if your relationships are going to last, that you'll actually take on this perspective that I'm now fighting for us, especially in a marriage. See, in a marriage, there must be a paradigm shift. There is no longer me, it is now we. And you always know if somebody is fighting for us based upon the words that are coming out of their mouth. The moment I got married was the moment I had to stop talking about me, myself, and I. Now my actual language must shift to we, us, our. I want to encourage you tonight, because so often, many of us in this room, we never had a good picture of a healthy marriage. We never had a good picture of a healthy relationship. And so a lot of us, we live in fantasy world, and the fantasy world is that healthy relationships don't experience pain. Healthy relationships don't hurt one another. Healthy relationships don't ever offend each other. Healthy relationships don't ever talk bad to each other. But that is false thinking. And if you keep on thinking that way, you're never gonna step in and begin to do the work. The work is you gotta fight for us. Every relationship will experience hell, but it's a real relationship that says, I'm not gonna stop here in hell. I'm gonna keep on going through it, and we're gonna go through it together. I wish I could get a witness at the 7:15 turn up who understood, I'm gonna make it through this thing. But what's coming out of your mouth? Week 3, we're gonna talk about the fact that our mouth holds our miracles. And there are some words that should never, ever be uttered out of your mouth if you are in a marriage. You don't use the word hate. You don't use the word divorce. Why would you give the devil a foothold into something that is so special and sacred? You gotta learn how to fight for us. I love it because John chapter 21, let's just get this picture in our mind because I don't wanna just move past this too quickly. Jesus Christ, the author, perfecter, and finisher of our faith, he has just gone through the craziest sequence of events. He's been betrayed by those that he thought loved him. He has been stripped naked. He has been beaten. He has been kicked. A crown of thorns has been put on his head. He has been stretched wide, hung high, and put on a tree. There he died on Calvary's Hill, and they put him in a tomb that wasn't even his. And now after he has resurrected from the grave, now after everybody has scattered and left him, the picture we discover of Jesus is that he is on the seashore seeking out his friends. They're not looking for him. He's looking for them. He's calling them friend. This is the gospel. Jesus always goes first. Jesus always comes looking for us because Jesus is a relational God, and he's not all about me, he's all about we. And you need to get it in your heart tonight. I don't care what you've done. I don't care how far you think you have gone. There is a God in heaven who comes to you and he calls you friend, and he says, I have grace to spare for you. Come on, somebody, give God some praise in this place if you're thankful that he came and found you when you weren't even looking for him. Oh, that could preach all night. That he came and found me when I wasn't even looking for him. I got a sense in my spirit tonight that somebody showed up to this middle school at 7:15 p.m. They weren't looking for God. They weren't thinking about God. One of your friends convinced you to walk into this room, but you have no idea that God has been looking for you. And here he is tonight, and he says, it's time to come home. I have a plan for your life. Come on, somebody, even in the balcony tonight, why don't you go ahead and give God some praise? Comes and finds us. Because he fights for us. This is the God that he is. He fights for us. And here he is. And he's coming, he's seeking them out. They're not even looking for him. They're back in their default mode, fishing. And here's Jesus. Hey, I just conquered death, hell, and the grave, but I still want you. I wonder, how do you respond when the people closest to you let you down? How do you react when you feel offended? Because understand, if there was ever somebody who could be justified with a victim mentality, it would be Jesus. If there was ever somebody who could ever just say, yo, everybody's turned their back on me, and I think I'm just gonna go and throw my own party, it could have been Jesus. But I wonder, what is your reaction? Do you sulk in silence? Are you still thinking like a preschooler? I won't forgive them until they come and apologize to me. See how long that will last in a marriage. You're never gonna conquer if you don't actually get past these passive-aggressive defense mechanisms. Ignoring your spouse, that's a passive-aggressive defense mechanism. The silent treatment, that's a passive-aggressive defense mechanism. cursing until you actually just raise the roof in the house and scream it all out and let rage. That's a passive aggressive defense mechanism that you learned along the way. And it's causing you happiness for a moment. You feel like you're getting relief, but I'm telling you, you will not conquer that way. Listen to me. You cannot be victorious if all you ever do is play defense. Every boxer knows, I gotta play defense, but I will never win the fight if I don't ever have an offense, if I don't ever swing a punch. Watch Jesus. He shows us what offense in a relationship looks like. Jesus doesn't just wait for them to come and find him. He says, no, I will initiate. I will start the conversation. I will come back and get this relationship back on track. You need to be a person that you don't wait, but rather you go first and say, let's solve this thing. Let's get back together. Let's make this thing work. We don't have to let this thing break us apart. Jesus goes and finds them not to fight them, but he goes and finds them to fight for them. Are you just fighting your wife? Or are you fighting for your wife? Are you just fighting your husband? Or are you fighting for your husband? Are you just fighting your kids? Or are you fighting for your kids? Listen, what you project, people will reflect back to you. And if you don't ever fight for your relationship, and if you don't ever fight for us, don't expect for anybody else to fight for you. But if you will make a decision right now to say, you know what? I gotta get to the other side. I gotta see it from another perspective. I gotta learn the other side. When you declare, I will fight for us, you're gonna reap that blessing back to your life. Come on, if you believe it, somebody give God some praise tonight. We gotta fight for us.
I think when it comes to us really trying to walk out fighting for us, the challenge is that us doesn't come naturally. Because every single one of us in this room, we're used to knowing our side. Like, I know my side. I know my side so well. I know why I did it. I know the motivation behind it. I know the circumstances surrounding it. I know my background, I know my history. I know every blade of grass on my side. Everything about it. I know my side so well. Some of us in this room, we love personality tests, right? Anybody with me? Personality tests are all about discovering more about my side. Tell me more about me. I wanna cultivate my side. I wanna make it grow. I wanna make it healthy, but there's a whole other side. What's on the other side? Because the only way to have wholeness in your relationship, the only way to truly have a thriving, beautiful friendship with the one that you love is to realize that it's not all about you. That it's not just my side, it's the other side. And I gotta learn the other side. See, there is the other personality. There's the other love languages. There's the other dreams. There's the other aspirations. There's the other backgrounds. There's the other motivations. There's the other wounds. There's the other tough times. There's the other family dynamics. There's the other upbringing issues. There's a lot of other for you to discover. There's a lot of other for you to discover. The question is, are you gonna value the other side? Are you actually gonna take the time to get to know the other side? Would you rather be right or whole? Would you rather stand your ground or actually have peace in your home? Would you rather be in a self-serving relationship where everything is about you, or could it be that the greatest joy in your life could be from speaking life and love over the one that you walk beside, watching them thrive, watching them grow, watching them step in faith and grow and take leaps that they never thought were possible, but you believed and you spoke it, so they stepped out. Could that be the most fulfilling part of your relationship? I don't know. You'll never know until you get on the other side. You'll never know till you get on the other side. See, when it comes to make or break relationships, we have to fight for us, but secondly, we have to listen to them. We have a listening problem in our society. Always fiending for consumption. What do I need? What am I searching for? God's given you 2 ears and a mouth for a reason. That's not something we tell kids. This is the beauty of the creation that God has given us. It's a sign to every single one of us that we should value listening. That our journey in relationship, it starts with listening before we speak. Some of us in this room tonight, we're looking at the person that we love and there's disagreement. There's discord in our home. There's issues that you can't get past because you don't understand the other side. Let's be honest. When you look at the other side, you say, I just don't see their side. Makes no sense to me. They don't have a side. He doesn't have a side. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Can I tell you, you'll never see the other side until you hear the other side? It's only when you hear the other side that the other side even becomes visible, because you have to hear it from the heart of the person who occupies the other side. Rich and I have been in so many disagreements. We've been together 17 years. Over the years, there have been so many arguments that we've been in that Rich was speaking, and I wasn't listening to one word he was saying as he was speaking. Because in my mind, I was having this internal dialogue, and I was getting ready for the moment that he shut his mouth, because I had a whole other round of ammunition, baby. I was ready because I was looking at it as a fight between us instead of fighting for us. And I had to learn to listen. I had to learn to open up my ears when he was speaking, not so I could be understood, but so that I could seek to understand him. So what is your approach when it comes to listening? Are you taking the time to listen to the person you love, or are you just waiting for them to finish so that you can show them your side? We see this picture in the text. After they catch this unbelievable harvest of fish, like beyond belief, can't even pull the nets up, Jesus shouts to them from the shore. He's like, hey, come on to shore for breakfast. How many of you love it when somebody makes breakfast for you? Let's go. I want it all. I'll have a little bit of bacon. I'll have some pancakes. I'll have the eggs. Let's go all in. Let's just make it a memory. Jesus says, come to the shore. I've got breakfast waiting for you. They come to the shore. He takes some of the fish. He's already got some things grilling and cooking. The Bible says that they sit down and they have a meal that Jesus has prepared for them. And then Jesus, the one who knows all, the one who doesn't need to ask a single question, doesn't have any questions in his mind, decides to listen. He looks across at Peter and he says, Peter, do you love me? And he allows Peter to articulate how he feels. Peter says, I love you, Lord. He says, and feed my sheep. He asks him again. Peter says, I love you. He says, feed my sheep. He asks him again. And he listens each time, allowing Peter to express how he really feels. Jesus could have walked into that conversation ready to accuse him. He could have walked into that conversation ready to condemn him, ready to let him know that he did have a plan in the greatest mission in history, but because of his actions, he had pushed himself aside. But instead, Jesus walks in with love, with compassion, and he decides to listen. And Peter is able to talk. Can I just show you a picture of what real relationship looks like? Jesus set a table and chose to listen. I think if we applied this to our relationships, it would bring more peace and restoration than we could ever imagine. He set a table and then he listened. He prepared a meal. He served the one that he cared about. He decided to take the time. Listen, this is not a text message war. This is not a shouting match. This is a picture of truly caring for someone, for fighting for us, choosing to listen. What would happen if we did the same? I believe we would see God heal our relationships really like never before.
And the thing that I think sticks out to me about listening is that listening is powerful. And the reason why it's powerful is because listening will always create empathy in your relationships. And empathy is one of these like lost words that we don't use very much, and many reasons for that. But one of the reasons why we don't really understand empathy is because we think empathy is sympathy. And sympathy by definition is me feeling for you or me feeling bad for you. Yet empathy goes further than sympathy. Empathy is an understanding or a capacity to understand why you feel the way you do. Empathy requires you to put your feet into somebody else's shoes and to try to see the world from their lens. It takes immense emotional capacity. And while some are more gifted at it than others, all of us can get better if we'll open up our ears and seek to understand before we seek to be understood. We need empathy. This is what makes Jesus so powerful. I don't know where you come from tonight. I don't know what you know about God, but this church, VOO, we worship a God named Jesus. And one of the reasons why we worship him is because he is an empathetic savior. We don't just see a God up in heaven who's just counting down the days to judge us and condemn us, but rather we see a God who put on human flesh and he came to this world, and according to the book of Hebrews, he walked the same path that you and I have walked. He's experienced the same trials and the same temptations. And tonight when we cry out to him and when we speak what's going on in our heart, he understands where we're coming from. He didn't just save us, he chose to empathize with us before he saved us. I wonder how many relationships could be saved if we would choose to empathize with the person we love first. See, the result of empathy is always compassion. We know that Jesus is compassionate. Luke chapter 7 tells a wonderful story about Jesus, and he approaches a funeral procession where he sees a woman who has just lost her one and only son. The Bible says that Jesus, full of compassion, the woman never speaks out. She never worships. She never gives her tithe. She doesn't pay any money. But rather, Jesus, who's full of empathy, now becomes full of compassion. And because he has compassion, he comes to the woman and heals her son. Because sympathy is a feeling, but compassion is an action. And when you choose to listen to the people you love, empathy is the result. But from empathy, you move to compassion. And from compassion, you move to forgiveness. And from forgiveness, you move to reconciliation. Many of us in this room were on the verge of breaking, but it doesn't have to break if you would just listen and let empathy rise up in your heart. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago. He's 40 years old, pretty successful guy. And he was talking about some counseling that he's been doing recently. At VOO Church, we believe in the power of counseling. We believe that many times we've got some stuff going on up here and some stuff in here that if we don't get out, it's gonna end up just getting out one way or another. And so he was doing some counseling about his childhood. And this was some intense therapy and it required some role play. And he was going through a scenario with his dad when he was about 8 years of age and how his dad had hurt him. And so the counselor said, okay, I'm gonna play your dad and I want you to play the 8-year-old version of yourself. And they started a dialogue back and forth. And as they went through it, he said, I want you to tell your dad what you wish you could have told him. So they had this conversation going, and my friend, he talks about it and he says 10, 20 minutes, and he was really feeling really good. He's like, oh, that was awesome. I feel a whole lot better. And the counselor said, no, we're not done yet. He said, now I'm gonna play you when you were 8 years of age, and I want you to play your dad. And my friend, he tells this story so beautifully. He said something shifted in that counseling session because as he started to play the role of his dad, all of a sudden empathy is what resulted. And because for the first time in his life he ever saw from his dad's perspective, the result was compassion. And from compassion, he was able, after many, many years of living bound up with a broken relationship, to forgive his father. And now today, there's been reconciliation in their home. Come on, somebody, give God a shout of praise. This is about getting to the other side. When I listen to them, empathy is the result.
Yeah, we have to fight for us. We have to listen to them. But lastly tonight, we're asking this question: how do we get to the other side? Get over yourself. Now, I'm not gonna tell you to turn to your neighbor. Why don't you just point at yourself and say, get over yourself? See, to get to the other side, lastly, we have to get over ourselves. we see this picture of Jesus taking strides forward to show love. But Peter had to do something too. Peter had to do something to restore the relationship. We see the picture that we opened up with tonight. That Jesus appears on the shore and he shouts out, he says, friends. Don't you love that he starts with friends? Friends, have you caught anything tonight? And they say no. And Jesus says, throw your net on the right side of the boat. And as they throw their net on the right side of the boat, there comes a harvest of fish so large that they cannot pull the net up. That's how full to the brim the net is with a catch. Throw your net to the right side of the boat. Throw your net to the right side of the boat. Jesus always leads you to the right side. We can play church and act like everything is okay, but we all find ourselves on the wrong side from time to time. We find ourselves in the place of bitterness. We find ourselves in the place of offense. We find ourselves in a place of isolation, of jealousy, of greed, of bitterness. But every time we listen to the voice of Jesus, he leads us to the right side. And you know what's found on the right side? Forgiveness is found on the right side. Restoration is found on the right side. Healing is found on the right side. Joy and peace and the love of the Father is found on the right side. Peter couldn't see it with his own eyes. He had to trust. There was so much beneath the water. He just had to trust and obey and drop his net, and there was a harvest. But he had to get over himself. So what do you mean? Well, it would have been so easy for Peter after a long night of fishing to look back at the man who was yelling at him from the shore and say, you know what, man? Appreciate the wisdom, but I've actually been fishing my whole life. I know all there is to know about fishing. My dad fished before me. My grandpa fished before me. This is what we do. Thanks for the tip, but I've tried everything there is to try tonight. There's nothing to catch. And he could have come to shore with nothing in his hands. But he decided to get over his own knowledge, to get over his own past experience, to get over his own current situation, and to get over himself and walk to the other side. And just by choosing to trust, even when he didn't know what was gonna happen, there was a harvest greater than he could have ever imagined. Jesus was just waiting. I've been holding this for you. You can try all you want on your own to manufacture it. You can try to glue the pieces of your broken heart back together. You can try to heal your home. You can try to manufacture peace. You can try to stir up joy, but your hands will only be left empty. But the moment you trust me, the moment you listen to my voice, the moment you do what I say, you can't create it, but it's waiting for you. More than you can hold, more than you can take. There's a harvest. And it's not based on what you've achieved. It's based on how much I love you. It is my joy to provide for you. It is my joy to care for you. I've had my eye on you all along. Will you get over yourself? This is make or break. This is make or break. We have to get over ourselves. We have to go to the other side.
So often in relationships, we are our own worst enemy. And the only thing that's blocking you from blessing is yourself. Here's Peter. And as he listens to the voice of Jesus, the thing that they had been working on all night, the thing they had been wanting so desperately, the thing that they could not find, in one moment, they discovered it. I think relationships look like that. So often we go from relationship to relationship, thing to thing. Why can't I find what I'm looking for? Maybe it's because you keep trusting yourself instead of trusting the one who has everything that you need. You gotta love Jesus, because it's from that catch, it's from all those fish that he says, I'm gonna make you breakfast. I wanna cook you some food. And what does he do? He sits there with Peter. He's been fighting for us, and now he's listening to Peter, and he says, Peter, do you love me? Do you know how many times he asked Peter, do you love me? He asked Peter, do you love me? 3 times. I don't know why exactly he did it, but I just think the reason why he asked him 3 times is because Peter had denied him 3 times. And it wasn't that Jesus needed to hear Peter recount for his sins 3 times the amount of his sins. It was that Peter needed to unravel himself. Peter needed to come to the end of his mistakes, the end of his error, the end of his will, the end of his effort. He needed to come back to this place of saying, oh my goodness, you're telling me that my future is not gonna be dictated by my past. You're telling me that my history is not in control of my destiny. And I can see Jesus going, I've just been trying to get you to this place from the very beginning. For you have forgotten who you are, Peter. You are Peter. And upon this rock, I will build my house, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. But you got to get out of the way. What would happen tonight if we could just get to the other side? Some of us were spending our entire relationship complaining about 12 feet by 18 feet, 5 feet deep. And life is gonna be full of these moments. But how you respond to these moments, it's one thing for your pool to be placed in the wrong spot. It's another thing for you to be on the wrong side of your relationship. The only way you're gonna get to the right side is by listening to the voice of Jesus. And the only way is by you saying, I'm gonna fight for us and I'm gonna listen to them. And watch this. The quicker you get onto the right side is the quicker that you're gonna be on the same side. And when you're on the same side, that's where power occurs. It's the same side that you become effective. It's the same side that you become efficient. It's the same side where you find happiness. It's the same side where you find joy. It's the same side that you discover everything that you have been looking for. Tonight, we gotta learn the other side. Do you believe that tonight? Come on, Food Church, can we go ahead and give God some praise in this place?